Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I am here with our resident expert to break down a topic that affects basically everyone listening.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, we have a really fascinating, if slightly terrifying topic today.
We really do. So I want you to imagine sending out 20 resumes. You have the exact degree, you have the right experience, and you get absolutely zero interviews.
Just completely ghosted.
Right. And you assume, well, the market is just tough right now. But what you don't know is that during a preliminary automated video screening, an algorithm analyzed the micro-hesitations in your speech.
Yeah.
It compared them against a massive clinical data set and secretly labeled you as a high-cost health liability.
Wow.
You aren't rejected by a human hiring manager. You're filtered out by this mathematical shadow of yourself, and you don't even know it happened.
You can't appeal it.
Exactly. You can't appeal it, and you just live a smaller life as a result.
You know, we've spent the better part of 2 decades legislating the explicit data we hand over. We built these complex legal fortresses to protect the inputs of our digital lives.
Right, like we locked the front door.
Exactly, we locked the front door. But this scenario exposes the reality that while we were obsessing over that front door, a side door was left completely wide open.
Yeah.
And through that side door, machines are generating entirely new, deeply intimate versions of us without our permission.
Which brings us to the core of our deep dive today. We're looking at a genuinely paradigm-shifting essay called The Invisible Side Door, Owning the Inferred Self. And we're also pulling in concepts from the author's broader work on the cognitive revolution and the desperation algorithm.
There is so much to cover in those texts.
There is. Our mission for today is to explore this massive blind spot in our legal system, this gaping void between the data you intentionally hand over and the dangerous hidden conclusions machines are making about you, and figure out how we can actually take back control. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get to the real-world fallout, we need to draw a hard line between the raw material and the finished product, right?
Yeah, the author makes a really critical distinction between data and inference. We all generally understand data.
The facts.
Right. It's the concrete input. It's the GPS coordinates pinging from your phone, your purchase history, the raw text of your search queries. And our legal system actually understands this pretty well.
Yeah, like those strict European data rules.
Exactly. If a company wants to collect and sell your literal medical records, there are massive regulatory frameworks governing that transaction. Data is highly protected raw material.
But inference is a totally different beast.
It is. An inference is a conclusion a system draws about you that you never explicitly told it. It's the finished product.
And the mechanism behind that output is what I found so startling in the text. I mean, the source points out this isn't just about an algorithm noticing you bought baby clothes and guessing, oh, she's pregnant.
No, it's way deeper than that.
We are talking about predictive modeling that correlates seemingly meaningless behaviors to severe physiological or psychological states. Like the AI looks at the rhythm of your typing.
Yeah, literally the microsecond delays between keystrokes on your smartphone.
Right, and the specific syntax of your text messages. And then it cross-references those patterns against vast data sets to infer that you are, say, experiencing early cognitive decline or severe clinical depression.
It's essentially diagnosing your motor function and mental state without a medical license.
Which is wild.
It really is. The
Yeah.
system might observe the time of night you are active on an app, map it against how you physically scroll through the user interface, and infer deep emotional vulnerabilities that you might not even be consciously aware of yourself.
I was trying to think of a good way to explain this, and it's basically like buying flour, sugar, and eggs at the grocery store.
Okay.
The store's privacy policy protects the receipt showing you bought those raw items. But the inference is, like, the AI watching you buy them and concluding that you are baking a wedding cake, guessing the date of the wedding, and figuring out exactly how stressed out you are about it.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. The law protects the receipt, but the recipe it guessed is just totally unprotected.
Right. And what's fascinating here is how the legal framework fundamentally ignores that finished product. Because you didn't explicitly type, "I am experiencing cognitive decline" into a form, the law doesn't treat that knowledge as yours to control.
It's just out there.
Exactly. The actual insight about you, which is the thing of real commercial and manipulative value, just floats free in this completely ungoverned space.
But the danger isn't just that these insights exist in a vacuum. The text makes it very clear that these models are aggressively put to use. These inferences are weaponized to shape your reality.
Yeah, it's not just theoretical.
Right. Like if an algorithm infers you are feeling highly anxious based on your scrolling cadence, the advertiser doesn't just show you a generic ad. They dynamically time a targeted pitch for the exact micro-moment your baseline data suggests you are most vulnerable and impulsive.
And the impacts scale rapidly into structural exclusion. I mean, consider financial services.
Oh, yeah, the loan example.
Right. A system monitors your device activity, maybe noting you're frequently awake at 3:00 a.m. checking bank balances, while simultaneously downloading multiple gig economy apps.
Just totally stressed out.
Yeah. The predictive model correlates these behaviors and generates an inference of acute financial distress. So when you subsequently apply for a loan, you were dynamically offered a significantly higher interest rate.
It just knows you're desperate.
Exactly. The system mathematically understands that your desperation severely reduces your likelihood of walking away from a predatory offer. And the same logic applies to insurance pricing, where an inferred, totally undocumented health status ends up dictating your premiums.
Let me push back on this for a second, though.
Sure.
Because, hasn't marketing always relied on guessing what people want? Like, human beings make inferences all the time. If I walk into a job interview wearing a wrinkled, stained suit, a human hiring manager is going to infer that I'm careless or unprofessional.
Right.
And they might reject me based on that assumption. We don't legislate human judgment. So why is algorithmic inference held to this higher, almost impossible standard? Isn't this just the digital equivalent of a human making a subjective call?
That is a really valid point, but the distinction lies in the architecture of the harm. Human bias, while totally flawed, operates in the visible world.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, if you walk in with a wrinkled suit and don't get the job, you have the contextual awareness to realize your presentation was a factor. Traditional institutional harms also announce themselves.
Like a stolen credit card or something?
Yeah, or if a human underwriter denies you a mortgage, you receive a formal rejection letter, right, with a stated reason.
And you can appeal it.
Exactly. You have a legal pathway to correct the record. Exclusion by inference, on the other hand, is silent by design.
So there is no rejection letter for the micro-hesitations in your voice?
None. The algorithm filters you out of the hiring pool before a human ever even looks at your resume. You never get the opportunity to say, wait, my speech cadence is due to a minor speech impediment, not a cognitive liability.
Wow.
You were completely unaware the judgment was ever rendered. You just absorb the failure, you blame yourself, and you live a progressively narrower life, utterly blind to the invisible algorithmic barriers closing doors in your face.
Man, that is grim. And if these systems are inflicting this level of silent damage, I think the immediate instinct for anyone listening is to look for the opt-out button. Right?
Yeah, of course.
But this brings us to the complete collapse of our primary defense mechanism, which is consent. The author argues that clicking accept on a terms of service agreement is just structurally incapable of protecting you from this inference economy.
It absolutely is. The whole framework of consent requires informed intent. You cannot logically consent to something you do not know is possible. When you agree to the terms of a new digital service, you're authorizing the collection of the raw data, the bricks and mortar from your analogy earlier.
The flour and the sugar.
Exactly. You are not consenting to a machine learning model, which maybe hasn't even been developed yet, aggregating your data with millions of other users to locate latent variables and synthesize an inference about a vulnerability you didn't even know you possessed.
Right, because how could you?
You couldn't. The protective mechanism of consent was engineered for the visible world of explicit data transfer. It completely shatters when applied to the invisible world of predictive output.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The author illustrates this failure of consent by introducing this concept of the desperation algorithm.
Yes, this is a crucial part of the text.
It looks at the mechanics of what happens when human beings are pushed to their absolute physical or emotional limits. Like, think someone attempting to navigate a complicated healthcare system while suffering from an undiagnosed chronic illness.
They are terrified.
Exactly. They are searching for symptoms at midnight. They're participating in niche medical forums. They're abandoning shopping carts full of expensive experimental supplements.
And during those periods of intense friction and fear, people generate an extraordinary volume of highly revealing behavioral data.
Yeah.
The desperation algorithm is specifically designed to identify these exact spikes in erratic digital behavior. It harvests this distress, runs the predictive modeling, and commodifies the resulting inference at the precise moment the individual is least capable of defending themselves.
That's so predatory. And the philosophical argument here is just devastating. The author points out that mistaking the absence of an alternative for the presence of agreement is the defining trap of the modern internet.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you are forced to agree to invasive tracking simply to access a digital service required to manage a chronic illness or just to hold down a job in the modern economy, you aren't actually consenting.
You're not.
Consent extracted under conditions of extreme pressure isn't an agreement. It's submission.
We are leaning on a broken shield. We act as if agreeing to data collection also covers the downstream generation of hidden knowledge.
Right.
It's basically equivalent to signing a contract where the other party retains the right to append new clauses in invisible ink derived from your future behaviors and then enforce them against you indefinitely.
So if consent fails us entirely, we have to look for a completely different legal weapon, which takes us away from the realm of privacy law and over to a pioneering application of property law.
Right, the Denmark example.
Yeah, the essay examines this fascinating precedent set in Denmark to understand how we might begin to legally reclaim our digital shadows. So what exactly did they do?
Well, in 2025, Denmark introduced a groundbreaking amendment to its copyright legislation, specifically engineered to combat the proliferation of deepfakes.
Okay.
But what made this legislation revolutionary wasn't the technical countermeasure itself, it was the conceptual reframing of human identity.
Okay.
Instead of relying on traditional privacy rights, which essentially just argue for the right to be left alone, Denmark proposed granting individuals actual ownership rights over their physical likeness.
Wow. So it redefined the body as property.
Yes. Under this framework, your face and your voice are assets you hold the title to. If a synthetic media company generates a deepfake of you, you aren't just filing a privacy complaint.
Because it's not just about privacy anymore.
Right. You are initiating a theft of property claim.
Yeah.
You can demand immediate removal and seek financial compensation because an entity seized an asset you legally own.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But if Denmark is giving people actual ownership over their digital faces, why doesn't that solve our inference problem?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we immediately run into the structural limitation of the Danish model.
Okay.
The legislation brilliantly protects the outward recognizable self. It fortifies the surface.
Right, how you look and sound.
Exactly. A deepfake, no matter how sophisticated, is merely a synthetic imitation of that surface. But algorithmic inference, the side door, is not concerned with imitation. It is concerned with extraction. It concludes what you haven't said. It maps your internal state, your future risks, and your latent vulnerabilities.
So Denmark basically put an impenetrable lock on the digital face, but left the inferred mind completely exposed to the elements.
That's exactly it.
The copyright law prevents a company from, cloning your voice to sell a product, but does absolutely nothing to stop an AI from analyzing the microtremors in your completely real voice during a customer service call to infer you're a high-risk liability.
The surface is secured by ownership, but the psychological interior remains ungoverned territory.
Right.
However, the author emphasizes that despite its limitations, the Danish precedent achieves something vital. It proves that the legal system is actually capable of treating the digital self as property.
The blueprint is there.
Yes, the blueprint exists. The legal hurdle now is extending that concept of ownership inward, taking the property rights that protect the outer shell and applying them to the predictive conclusions drawn about the person inside.
Okay, so if Denmark proved that treating the digital self as property works for our faces, the logical next step is applying property law to our minds. Which brings us to the author's proposed architectural solution, which they call inference escrow.
Yes.
And I find this concept brilliant because it doesn't try to uninvent the technology, right? We're not going backwards. It just changes the chain of custody. So how does this escrow mechanism actually function?
To understand the solution, you have to look at the default state of the current tech ecosystem.
Okay.
The moment a predictive model generates an inference about you, the entity that owns the model owns the inference. They store it, they cross-reference it, they monetize it.
And I have no say in it.
None. You are entirely excluded from the transaction. Inference escrow legally flips that default. The new foundational rule dictates the inference belongs to the subject unless they actively authorize its release.
So it creates like a digital safe deposit box.
Precisely.
The AI is still permitted to process the raw data. The machine learning can still run its pattern recognition, but the resulting insight is immediately quarantined. And only the individual holds the cryptographic or legal key to that box.
The power dynamic completely inverts. Let's say an algorithm analyzes your typing cadence and infers early markers for a neurological condition.
Which is terrifying, but okay.
Great. But instead of that insight being sold to your health insurance provider to jack up your premiums, the inference is locked in your escrow. You govern the output.
I see.
You have the agency to unlock that specific box and share the inference with your primary care physician to facilitate early medical intervention. But you retain the absolute right to keep it locked away from data brokers and predatory advertisers.
But wait, implementing this would require tearing down the walls of the algorithmic black box, wouldn't it? I mean, you can't manage a safe deposit box if you don't know what's inside it, or if you don't even know the bank exists.
Yes, the author mandates massive transparency as an absolute prerequisite for this system to function.
Right.
Visibility is the core requirement here. Individuals must possess a fundamental, unassailable legal right to know not just what raw data was extracted, but what precise conclusions were synthesized from it.
That would be a game changer.
Furthermore, the system demands structural limits on commercial exploitation during periods of vulnerability.
Going back to the desperation algorithm.
Exactly.
Oh.
Society must legally recognize that an algorithmic inference of acute medical or financial distress is a signal that a human being requires protection, not an optimized opportunity for predatory extraction.
So what does this all mean? We are staring down the barrel of a complete rewiring of how the global technology sector handles human insight.
This raises an important question regarding the window of opportunity. The urgency of this framework really cannot be overstated.
Why is that?
Because the global inference economy is currently being constructed on the foundational assumption that the human mind is an unowned, unregulated frontier.
Wow.
Every passing month bakes this invisible extraction deeper into product architecture, model training, and corporate revenue projections.
So we are risking the classic tech regulation trap. If we wait until the structural harm is so undeniable and catastrophic that society finally demands intervention, the roots will just be too deep to rip out.
The business models will be too entrenched.
Yeah. We have a rapidly closing window right now to establish the legal rules of the game before the concrete fully cures.
Think about it. 20 years ago, we recognized the threat to our explicit data, and we built frameworks like the GDPR. We secured the front door.
Right.
We now have an even narrower margin of time to recognize the threat of predictive extraction before it permanently becomes the invisible infrastructure dictating our reality.
It's wild to think we basically spent a generation fighting half the battle. We poured billions into guarding the raw inputs, the addresses, the search queries, the credit card numbers. But we just left the side door completely unguarded.
Wide open.
And through that door, predictive models are quietly taking those mundane facts and spinning them into devastatingly accurate, invisible judgments about our health, our stability, and our value to society.
Yeah.
And those unseen judgments, far more than the raw data itself, are what actively shape our real-world opportunities. They quietly dictate the jobs we are offered, the financial leverage we hold, and the boundaries of the world we are allowed to experience.
The law absolutely must evolve to recognize the finished product and grant you the fundamental property right to govern it. Failing to do so simply abandons the most intimate architecture of our minds to the highest bidder in the data market.
Which leaves you with one final thought to mull over today, building on the implications of this invisible economy. If AI systems are relentlessly generating these unseen, inferred versions of you in the dark, what happens when your inferred self makes a mistake?
Yeah.
What happens when the model hallucinates a risk you would never take, or a condition you don't actually have, and locks a door you desperately needed open? Who are you really in the eyes of the digital world? Are you the flesh and blood person navigating the physical world, or are you the invisible mathematical shadow the machine built without your permission? And if the machine's version controls all the access points to your future, which one is the real you?
It's a heavy thought.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible systems around you, and we'll see you next time.